Hmm.
It seems like you're live now. I'm going to make you host back again, and then you will have to make me a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yep, made you host now. Just make me a co-host. Awesome.
Hi, Judy. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Elaine. Good to see you all. Hi, Jan. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
I know you heard from Get Set Up about doing a class with us, maybe.
Well, I'm thinking about it. Yes, thank you.
Good. Do you think about it? Hi, Cheryl Ann and Jan and Nancy, Wanda.
Hi.
Wanda, you're a real regular now. I think I've seen you
Yes,
every
I
day with
am.
this. Isn't it great?
Yes, I'm enjoying myself.
Remind me where you're from, Wanda.
Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's right. You're part of the Charlotte contingent.
Yeah.
It's a fine town. I spent some summers there in college. I worked at a restaurant called the White Horse.
I remember the White Horse. It's called 300 East Boulevard now.
Okay. They made the best sandwiches.
And best stuffed baked potatoes also.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Bev and Deb from Michigan. And who's with you, Bev? You're muted.
It's Pete.
Hi, Pete.
Hey,
Welcome.
what's up?
I love it when couples come and watch this together. That's super.
We're a
Hi,
couple.
John. Welcome back again. Hi, Eva.
Hi.
Hi, Pam. Oh, we've got lots of regulars here, but not lots of new folks too. I'm glad to see the new folks. Anybody so far here that's like you're new to Get Set Up? All right. Hey, Nancy. Fabulous. Oh, great. Everybody, you can tell Nancy how great Setup is.
It's really wonderful.
I mean, the classes are
It really
free.
is, yeah.
We have Get Set Up junkies. They tell me that they'll be like, "This is my 6th class today." They don't
I've
do
done
that
at least
forever.
4. I've done 4 in a day.
There you go. Hi, Melinda.
Hey, Russ.
Hi,
Russ.
Jutta. Great to see you all here. Hi, Nikki. And I just have someone that's Ems and Christine and Dolores. And Michael is our TA, and he's put a nice note in there today that if you want to get a copy of the recording, you can email help@getsetup.io. I heard from them in a meeting the other day that videos of classes are the most commonly requested thing of the help desk. So it looks like you are doing your job, keeping them busy. That's good. And here's a tip. If you're taking a class on something like how to learn Microsoft Word or anything, if you get the video later, you can pause the instructor while you practice. That's what I tell people. I said, I was teaching that for a while, and I'd say, listen, get the video that later. You can pause, Rust, while you go over a computer and practice. And they're like, oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Good to see you all here today. We got quite a nice crowd. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Art in France.
Mm.
And I've actually seen some of this art.
I do too.
Some of it I'd like to see. I've been to the Musée d'Orsay.
How about the Louvre?
I have not been to the Louvre. I think the secret to museums in Europe is to go in the off season. And by off season, I mean like November or February, because it may not be as nice outside. So what? You're going to go inside to a museum all day long, and there's no, I almost said no crowds. The crowds are smaller, I'm sure. The only time I've seen any of these places or no crowds was like last year in May. They were showing pictures of the streets of Rome, and there literally were no people, not just no crowds. There were no people. I think the Pope walked anybody see that picture of the Pope walking somewhere all by himself down a street? It was amazing.
Well, that was all because of COVID, right?
That was all because of COVID. Yes. It was really the off season. They were having an off year. I feel bad for anybody that was in the tour business, travel business, tourist business last year. I have a lot of friends who run tours and also publish guidebooks and develop travel. And for a lot of them, it was a very bad year. I do feel bad for them. It did turn out to be a good year for some things, though, like going out and riding a bike. I don't know the statistics. I was teaching a class on biking, and I'm going to start to do a new series on biking. And last year, I think, was a record for sales. And if you want to buy a new bike these days, it's really, really hard because the bicycle shops don't know when they're going to get bikes in. Well, welcome everybody. This afternoon, we're going to look at art in France through the eyes of Rick Steves. Good to see you all. This is second to last Rick Steves special. We've been doing Rick Steves all month because he was on Get Set Up. Tomorrow is history of communism in Europe. And if any of you saw that when we did that the first time, we've got some different stuff this time. A little bit the same, but also much more new stuff. So we'll be doing some good things tomorrow, learning a little bit about the history of communism in Europe. And I'll make sure that I put in the notes at the end some films I can recommend to you, especially about communism in East Germany to watch, including one that's kind of funny. So if you can imagine that. I want to just again welcome everybody, and we've got our
Russ, this
TA.
is Michael.
Yes.
I just want to interrupt you here. You mentioned a name of an app yesterday to translate the menus. Could you give me that name again?
Yes. So yesterday we were talking about menus because we were doing food, and I mentioned that if you use, this is one of the problems with this fake background. There it is. You can see my iPhone.
You
If
can
you have
give me
Google-
the app name. I can put it in the
It's
chat,
Google
right?
Translate. Google Translate, and you put it on camera mode, and it will translate anything that it sees through the camera. And if you come to I have a class on on mobile apps and online sites for travel, and that's one of the apps I mentioned. However, I'm also going to do a class on how to use your smartphone while you travel, things you can do. So that'll be another thing to show you.
Right.
Because a lot of people, I see a lot of interest in that one. Good. We're going to get that one going soon. A lot of people do things like you're somewhere and you're stuck and you say it into Google Translate, and then you translate into the language and you show it to somebody. They go, oh, down that way. Anyway, it's a great app. Thanks for asking about that, Michael. If you have any other questions about anything technical issues, you can put them in the chat to Michael. He'll see if he can help you out. And questions or comments about art today, please take the time to put your observation, your question into chat, and that way I can gather them all up at the end. We'll also have a chance at the end to talk about art in Europe, because if there's one thing that Europe is great for, it is art museums. I think we'll also do a class sometime coming up, maybe in June, on great art. I wish I didn't just say European art, great worldwide art in American museums, because maybe you can't get overseas to see it right now, but you can go to a museum in America. Do a lot more in June on travel in America, because a lot of us can't go overseas at the moment. Let me do a screen share with you. And you should see Thursday in art. Does that appear on your screen? Super. Yes. Art in France. That is the Musée d'Orsay showing on your screen. The Musée d'Orsay was a railroad museum that was going to be torn down. Can you believe they were going to tear down something that beautiful? And they had a different idea. And boy, did they have a better idea to make it into an art museum. I'm your guide, Russ Eanes. I'm from Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is in the lovely Shenandoah Valley, Western Virginia, between the Allegheny Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm a writer, a walker, and a cyclist. And in another life, I was a book publisher. And my favorite thing as a publisher was to help authors get their ideas in between the covers of a book. I'm now also a full-time guide with Get Set Up, because I love working with older learners, and I enjoy all the energy and the wisdom I collect from working with everyone here. Get Set Up helps you learn useful skills from people like you so you can do wonderful things. We learn from each other here, so ideally we can see you and you have your camera turned on. As I mentioned before, you can request a recording after class of this class. You email help@getsetup.io, and Michael has helpfully put that into the chat if you need that. If you're joining by live stream, the best way to participate is to join us and register for a class. And you can be live and ask questions in person. And lastly, of course, Get Setup's not paid to promote any specific products. Rick Steves came to us on April 13th, and tomorrow is the last Rick Steves travel day. You can see that video, and maybe Michael will also help us by putting the link to the video of Rick Steves' interview into the chat, and that way you can find that YouTube video and watch it if you've missed it. It was a great interview. So I'm going to stop this 1 second here, and I am going to reshare so that we can watch about art in France.
The Palais Du Louvre was once the palace of the ultimate kings and the biggest building in the entire world. Today, the vast horseshoe-shaped palace, built in stages over 8 centuries, with its striking 20th century pyramid entry, houses the world's grandest collection of art treasures. These people are waiting, not to get into the Louvre, but to buy a ticket to get into the Louvre. With a city museum pass, I save money and, more importantly, lots of time. Anyone with this pass can walk right in. Once inside, take a moment to enjoy the modern pyramid entry, a work of art in itself. It leads to 3 wings. We'll limit our visit to the Denon wing. The Louvre's huge collection covers art history from ancient times to about 1850. It can be overwhelming. A key to enjoying your visit: don't even try to cover it all. Enjoy an excuse to return. Remember to look up for a sense of how long before it was a museum, this was Europe's ultimate palace and home of its mightiest kings. In fact, the collection includes royal French regalia, such as the crown of Louis XV and the crown Napoleon wore on his coronation. This museum is one of the world's oldest, opened to the public during the French Revolution in 1793. I guess it just makes sense. You behead the king, inherit his palace and a vast royal collection of art, open the doors, and voila, a people's museum. The statue of Winged Victory seems to declare that the Louvre's ancient collection is Europe's finest. 2 centuries before Christ, this wind-whipped masterpiece of Hellenistic Greek art stood on a bluff, celebrating a great naval victory. And just past her stands an entourage of twisting and striding statues, each modeling the ideal human form. Venus de Milo has struck her pose like a reigning beauty queen for 2,500 years now. There must be more famous paintings here than in any other museum. The crowded Grand Gallery, while a quarter-mile long, displays only a small part of the Louvre's collection. We'll feature a few paintings representative of 3 styles: Renaissance, Neoclassical, and Romantic. Francois I, who ruled through the early 1500s, was France's Renaissance king. His private paintings became the core of the Louvre's collection. It was trendy for kings to have a Renaissance genius in their court. One of Europe's greatest kings, Francois I, got Europe's top genius, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo's work epitomized the aesthetics of the Renaissance, and the Louvre's collection of his paintings demonstrates his lasting influence. His Virgin of the Rocks illustrates his trademark sfumato technique, the subtle modeling of his faces, and in landscapes, how he shows distance by making it hazier and hazier. And this portrait, Mona Lisa, believed to be of the wife of a Florentine merchant, is Leonardo's crowd-pleasing masterpiece. With her enigmatic smile, she seems to enjoy all the attention. Her body is solid and statue-like, a perfectly balanced pyramid angled back so we can appreciate its mass. Her arm, level with the frame, adds stability and realism. And again, Leonardo creates depth in Mona's dreamy backyard. For me, this painting sums up the Renaissance: balance, confidence, and humanism, the age when the common individual, Mona Lisa, becomes art-worthy. Like the museum, Napoleon was a product of the Revolution. One of the Louvre's largest canvases shows Europe's grandest coronation, Napoleon's. The Pope traveled from Rome to Paris to crown Napoleon. But Europe's most famous megalomaniac, crown confidently in hand, pretty much ran the coronation show himself. The Pope looks a little neglected. The French Revolution was all about ending kings, so Napoleon crowned himself emperor. The politically correct art style of the time was neoclassical. Napoleon would approve of everything in this room: Greek, Roman, heroic, or patriotic themes, clean, simple, and logical. It's pure neoclassical. This Parisian woman, wearing ancient garb and a Pompeii hairdo, reclines on a Roman-style couch, perfectly in vogue. Neoclassicism was an intellectual movement. After all, during the Revolution, everything was subjected to the test of reason. Nothing was sacred. If it wasn't logical, it was rejected. The reaction to Neoclassicism was a romantic movement, Romanticism. Romanticism meant putting feeling over intellect, passion over restrained judgment. Logic and reason were replaced by a spirit that encouraged artists to be emotional and create not merely what the eyes saw, but also what the heart felt. What better setting for an emotional work than the story of an actual shipwreck? In Jericho's Raft of the Medusa, we see a human pyramid ranging from death and despair at its base to a pinnacle of hope as one of the survivors spots a ship which ultimately comes to their rescue. If art controls your heartbeat, this is a masterpiece. The Romantic movement championed nationalistic causes of the 19th century. Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People shows the citizens in 1830 once again asserting their power and raising the French flag at a barricade in those troublesome back streets of Paris. This painting and that struggle reverberate with the French people to this day. You can enjoy another delightful dimension of Paris in its parks. There's always a garden or park nearby, offering a fine place to stroll and simply enjoy a quiet moment in the middle of the city. One of the biggest city parks originated as the King's backyard, the Tuileries Gardens. The King's Yard included an indoor garden called the Orangerie. While the Orangerie no longer contains plants, today it's filled with a garden of Impressionist and early 20th century paintings. Select works by Renoir, Cézanne, Gauguin, and others. And its main attraction is Monet's water lilies, floating dreamily in the oval rooms the artist himself designed to showcase his masterpiece. This series of expansive curved panels is the epitome of Impressionism. It immerses you in Monet's garden at Giverny, his home and studio outside of Paris. Like an aging Beethoven who composed his most dramatic works while losing his hearing, the nearly blind Claude Monet spent his final years painting these symphonies of color on a similarly monumental scale. We're looking into his pond, dotted with water lilies and dappled by the reflections of the sky, clouds, and trees on the surface. Monet mingles the pond's many elements and then lets us sort it out. The true subject of these works is not the pond itself, it's the play of the light, reflecting off the water. Monet would work on several canvases at the same time, each one catching the light of a particular time of day. Get close and see how Monet worked. Starting from a blank canvas, he'd lay down thick, big brushstrokes of a single color, horizontal and vertical, to create a dense mesh of foliage. Over this, he'd add more color for the dramatic highlights until he got a dense paste of piled up paint. Up close, it's messy. But back up and the colors resolve into a luminous scene, just pure reflected color. Working, he'd move with the sun from one canvas to the next. Panning slowly around this hall, you see the pond turn from pre-dawn darkness to clear morning light, to lavender late afternoon, to glorious sunset. Sublime and tranquil, Monet intended this to be a place of reflection. Back when Monet was painting, Paris was busy with artists. Capturing the light, that was their passion. And wandering these elegant streets and inviting parks, it's easy to imagine them gaining inspiration here in Paris. nicknamed the City of Light. The Orsay Gallery, famous for its much-loved collection of Impressionist masterpieces, fills an old train station. The building itself is magnificent. Train tracks used to go right down the middle. The art of the Orsay takes you from 1848 to 1914. This is the time when the old world meets the modern world. It's conservative and revolutionary side by side. Before the Impressionists, 19th century artists painted idealized beauty. This was conservative art, popular throughout the 1800s because it was simply beautiful. Cabanel's Birth of Venus is the quintessence of beauty. The love queen reclines seductively, just born from the foam of a wave. At the time, sex was considered dirty and could be exalted only in a more pure and divine form. But while mainstream artists cranked out these ideal beauties, a revolutionary new breed of artist was painting a harsher reality. Cross the tracks and you find the realists. In The Painter's Studio, Gustav Corbei takes us behind the scene at the painting of a goddess. The model, not a goddess but a real woman, takes a break from posing to watch Corbei at work. Ordinary people mill about. The little boy seems to admire the artist, already notorious for his nonconformity. No one would show Corbei's work, so he put on his own art show. He built a little shack in the center of town and hung his paintings, basically thumbing his nose at the shocked public and his conservative critics. Edward Manet rubbed realism in the public's face, and they hated it. Manet's nude doesn't gloss over anything. The pose is classic, but the sharp outlines and harsh colors are new and shocking. Her hand is a clamp, her stare defiant. Ignoring the flowers her servant brings from her last customer, this prostitute looks out as if to say, "Next." It's around 1880, and Manet and his rat pack of conservatively dressed radicals gathered in Paris, pushing the creative envelope. It's time for the Revolution of Impressionism to begin. Impressionism initiated the greatest change in art since the Renaissance. Now artists were free to delve into the world of colors, light, and fleeting impressions. They featured easygoing open-air scenes, candid spontaneity, and always the play of light. Impressionists made their canvases shimmer by an innovative technique. Rather than mixing colors together on a palette, they applied the colors in dabs side by side on the canvas and let these mix as they traveled to your eye. Up close, it doesn't work, but move back and voila! Claude Monet is called the father of Impressionism. For him, the physical subject was now only the rack upon which to hang the light, shadows, and colors. Auguste Renoir caught Parisians living and loving in the afternoon sun. Dappled light was his specialty. In this painting, you can almost feel the sun's warmth and smell the powder on the women's faces. Even the shadows are caught up in the mood. Everything's dancing. Renoir paints a waltzing blur to capture not the physical details, but the intangible charm of a restaurant on Paris's Montmartre. Montmartre, a Parisian hill crowned by the dramatic Neo-Byzantine Sacré-Cœur church, was famous for the ambience captured by the Impressionists. A block away, the Place du Terre is jumbled with artists and tourists. If you really try, you can almost imagine Renoir, Van Gogh, and Picasso, who came here a century ago, poor, carefree, and seeking inspiration. Back then, life here on Montmartre was a working-class commotion of cafes, bistros, and dance halls. Painters came here for the low rent and ready joie de vivre. To get away from all the tourists, simply walk the back streets, where a bit of Montmartre's village charm survives. Ah, the steps of Sacré-Cœur. This is a place where locals and travelers alike congregate to marvel at Paris or each other. From here, the City of Light fans out at your feet. Your Parisian experience is a blend of great museums, fine food, and characteristic neighborhoods. A short walk takes us to the palatial mansion, studio, and garden of another great impressionist, Auguste Rodin. Rodin was a modern Michelangelo, sculpting human figures with powerful insight, revealing through the body their deepest emotions. Now a museum, this historic mansion presents the full range of Rodin's work. His early works match the Belle Epoque style of the late 19th century, noble busts of bourgeois citizens and pretty portraits of their daughters. But Rodin had working-class roots, and because of his populist sentiments, the art establishment snubbed him. That's no wonder. Look at the intensity of this symbol of France as she screams, liberté, égalité, fraternité. With his groundbreaking Bronze Man, Rodin came into his own and was recognized as an artistic force. From this point on, he left convention behind and blazed his own artistic trail. Here, his Hand of God shapes Adam and Eve from the mud of the earth to which they will return. Unlike Michelangelo, who selected a piece of marble and then carved a single work of art, Rodin created models, which could then be reproduced and sold as authorized versions. In The Kiss, a passionate woman twines around a solid man for their first spontaneous kiss. We can almost read the emotions that led up to this meeting of the lips. The Kiss was the first Rodin work the public loved. Rodin enjoyed his garden, as do visitors today who find it a place for peaceful meditation a century after the artist last planted a statue here. He sculpted the famous Thinker in 1906. Leaning slightly forward, tense and compact, every muscle working toward producing that one great thought, man contemplates his fate. Said Rodin, "It is a statue of myself." Before 1860, when Nice was under Italian rule, Antibes was France's last fort before the Italian border. The French king made sure the ramparts were strong and well defended. Today, the fort protects a priceless collection of Picassos. In 1946, 65-year-old Pablo Picasso was reborn. World War II was over, and Picasso could finally escape the gray skies and gray uniforms of Nazi-occupied Paris. Enjoying worldwide fame and the love of 23-year-old Françoise Gillot, Picasso moved to Antibes. He lived and worked in this castle and on this terrace. He painted like a madman, swam in the Mediterranean in the morning, partied with his friends in the evening, and painted again late into the night. Ever restless, Picasso had finally found his Garden of Eden, his joy of life, and he painted it. In his joie de vivre, we see his flower child, Françoise. She kicks up her heels and dances across a Riviera beach. Flute-playing satyrs, centaurs, and fauns announce the newfound freedom of a newly liberated France and a newly liberated Picasso. After decades in the city, Picasso rediscovered the joys of village life. Shopping in the Antibes market, he'd return home and turn groceries into masterpieces. With his distinct Cubist style, he captured sunbathers and munching locals. He was fascinated with the simple life of fishermen. Picasso painted a pagan paradise where civilized people could let their hair down and indulge in simple animal pleasures.
That was a great trip. For some reason, I don't know why, but maybe it's because it's outdoors or what it is, the cinematography. I love Rodin's gardens and house. Maybe it's sculptures are especially good to see on video more than a painting, which you have to spend time looking at in person. Anybody have any comments or share about your experience seeing any of that art? I know some of you've been there.
I just want to comment. Yeah, I've been to the Louvre quite a few times and the d'Orsay, both great museums. My advice to anyone is always study up beforehand, art books, any art classes and anything like that, because then when you see these paintings in person, you feel like you already know them. And then it's kind of like, oh my gosh, there's the real thing. And so it's almost like discovering friends or meeting a movie star or something like that. But it's a lot more exciting when you have studied them ahead of time and are familiar with them, and then just see the originals. So, but there's no doubt Paris has probably, those two museums have probably the biggest collection of what we would consider some of the most famous paintings. But I will say, last time I was over there was in August of 2016, and which is normally kind of it's a quiet time because all the Parisians have left. Spent the month in Brittany and was coming back home. But two things. One, Montmartre, a home exchange friend of mine let me use their apartment in Montmartre, and Montmartre is wonderful in the daytime, and I'm glad I stayed there. It was the first time I'd actually gone up and spent time in Montmartre, but it is really seedy and creepy at night. So it's the only place as a single traveler where, being out in the evening, I felt a little, not to hesitate. And the interesting thing is there's a lot of real kind of cheap stores around there and everything. It's just an interesting neighborhood, but up on the hill, and there's no doubt that the view from the church of all of it is wonderful. And, lots of little back streets to walk up and down. It's very hilly, but there is a little free bus circulator that runs, or I don't know, it might not be free. I think you can just use a metro ticket on it, but it circulates and you can kind of get on and off. It's also good. And the other thing is like those museums are often open late at night. And I guess when I was there, the Orsay was open in the evening one day a week, and that's a good time to get in. The price is reduced and it's not as crowded at all. So you can get in at a reduced price. And also the Louvre is open usually late. And if you go there about 5 o'clock in the evening, the lines are gone and you can just walk right in. So that's just a couple tips.
Good comments. Let's see. I'm going to come to Karen and John in just a second. Just emphasize a few things. Studying and learning before you go somewhere is really great advice. You can do it without it if you want. It isn't mandatory, but in any sense, if you can study where you're going before you go, it's a big tip. I mean, when I was walking across Spain for 5 weeks, people would say, oh, I didn't have a guidebook. And I would say, I would hate to think that I walked past some 10th century church that was very famous and didn't take note of it when I was going past it. Same thing is true of art. Art is complex and you have to understand what it means. And I was fortunate. The first time I ever went to an art museum was with my older brother, who is an artist, and explained each painting to me as we stood by them. And so I've always since then thought, okay, now who is this artist? What is the style of art they're doing? What were they trying to express? Means a lot more. So that's great advice you gave us, Melinda. And just to point out one thing Rick Steve said, City Museum Pass, good advice. You notice how he went right past the crowds in there. I always say if you're going to go somewhere and spend the money to go there, don't be bashful about spending some money on something that really matters to you. Now, some of my other classes, we slow travel. We talk about finding ways to save money, and that's important. But if you really want to see museums or other sites, and it's really on the top of your list, go ahead and spend the money you need to get in to see it. Karen, you're muted, Karen.
Well, I do ditto everything Melinda and you just said. But I was going to also say, if you have the luxury of time, which is a luxury, and my husband and I are very fortunate that we've been able to travel to Europe for over 40 years and usually spend 4 to 6 weeks every year in Europe. One thing we I highly recommend is, again, studying before you go, but also the first 2 days of any city that we go to, a large city, we usually get a 2-day big bus pass. And we get on the big bus, no matter how many times we've been to the city, and we just stay on it. We don't get off. And we just get all orientated again to all the places they take you and all the things they say. And then in between the bus stops, we usually move to the front and chat up the bus driver. And he will give you all kinds of local advice and what to do and what's going on and what's free. And and besides chatting up the bus driver and the guy that takes the tickets on the bus, a lot of times we'll just go into a hotel, any hotel, and nice or not nice, or a large or small, and we'll just go to the bar and talk to the bartender for a while. We try to find a place that's quiet. And again, we have gotten unbelievable advice, and we've gone to places that I've never seen on a map. No one's ever told me about them, but little places that maybe a bartender recommended that were some of our best experiences ever. And so again, my advice is the same as yours: study, study, study before you go, but chat up anybody you can, and even fellow Americans, and say, what was your highlight yesterday? Where are you going tomorrow? And they might say, oh, we heard about a concert. And we're like, really? Well, we didn't hear about it. Tell us more. So just talking and visiting. And I guess the main thing I've learned through all my years of traveling is not to try to be cool or try to be sophisticated or try to speak French. I can't do any of those things, but just by being open and asking for advice and asking for help, we've just been overwhelmed with advice of wonderful things to do and go that really weren't in the guidebooks.
Great advice, Karen. I really appreciate everything you said. That term chat someone up is really, I think that's where I've gotten my best tips when I've been traveling, in particular in Europe. It was when we were staying at our hotel in the French Quarter, near the center of the old city, and was it like a 9-story hotel or something, and there was no elevator. And they gave us breakfast every morning. It was a very casual affair. There was a kitchen you could cook in. And I guess after we'd been there several days and were friendly enough, the owner came up and started talking to us, and he said, the Musée d'Orsay is free tonight. So we're like, we'll go. And a lot of other people had the same idea, but it was a rainy night. So a lot of people didn't want to stand in line in the rain. We did. We had umbrellas. So yeah, just good point. And, that bus driver, he's got nowhere else to go but the front of his bus. And he probably wants to talk to people. That's why he has that job. Thanks, Karen. Great advice. John.
Seems like we got a question from John, right?
Well, basically, I just wanted to share with you, I put it in the chat as well. A art professor friend of ours recommended a particular museum that I had never heard of. And I think it's the best museum I've seen in Paris. And it's Musée Nissim de Commando. And it was a family. He was the Rothschild of the Ottoman Empire, a Jewish banker, set up a banking system throughout all of the Ottoman Empire, and then moved to Paris and tore down a house and built this house in a Jewish quarter because he was Jewish, and collected a magnificent amount of artwork and then left it to the city of Paris. And it is fabulous, as well as his story and the story of his family. Well, we're seeing.
That's great, John. Thanks. I'll make an additional comment because Rick Steve pointed out the city of Paris itself is a work of art. Just walking through it, and Montmartre is incredible. I made sure I got up there, and as he said, it was very crowded the day we went up there. And you do need to get off the main streets to see a little bit more of the character. There's some great advice has been put in the chat. And do you all know that you can save the chat after a Zoom call? If you go to if you pull the chat bubble up and you click on the bottom of your chat bubble, you should have a little box or with 3 dots in it. You click on that, you can save the chat. So there's some great advice because Janice gave us some really good advice I didn't know. She says, if you or your travel partner have a handicap sign, make sure to bring it and your driver's license, and you and your travel partner can enter most of France's museums at no cost, and you go to the front of the line. That's great. For going up to Eiffel Tower, you get a great discount. You can also move to the front of the line. Wow, there was a long line when I went past the Eiffel Tower. It didn't go up it the day that I went past it. All I know is people were going to be waiting there a long time. Yes, Joanne mentions at the Rodin Museum, a scene from the Midnight in Paris movie. Yes, right. The guide is, she was the wife of the president of France. We mentioned it last time we did this program about Midnight in Paris. If you haven't seen it, just a great fun movie. When we were in Paris with our daughter my wife and I back in 2013, we actually found the steps. It's also near the center of the city, near the French Quarter, where somebody who got his name, the actor. Somebody remind me of the actor in the movie Midnight in Paris. Anyway, we're all drawing blanks.
Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson, thank you. Owen Wilson is leaning back on a set of some steps when he gets picked up every night to go back into 1920s Paris. And we've got a picture of ourselves each on those steps. It's a great part of Paris to visit. And if you get there, watch the movie first. It's also just fabulous cinematography, beautiful shots of Paris. Anybody else have got something about Paris art you want to share? Any of your experiences going there? Go ahead, Karen. You're muted still.
I don't know when I'm going to learn how to unmute, but anyway, I didn't want to talk too much, but I did want to mention some things that might be helpful. When you talked, the person that talked about taking your handicap sign, which is a great idea. Also, and I just used this yesterday, if any of you that are art lovers or any of you that are docents at any museum, I carry my my ID with me, and almost any museum will let me in free. Any art museum and even history museum will let me in. In fact, I was in Corpus Christi yesterday, and I went to an art museum, and I showed them my docent. I always carry my docent ID, and they immediately waived the admission fee. So if you take it internationally, it works there too. I've used it in many different museums. If you have that kind of an ID, or maybe even, I don't know about AARP or AAA, but you would be surprised. Some of those things are helpful in different places that you go.
That's right. And take advantage of the fact that you're a senior, because they give senior discounts to all sorts of things. And I love it. And in Europe, I don't know about everywhere, but a lot of places I've been, the seniors are younger than they are in America. In the U.S., often they have to wait until you're 65 to be a senior, but in Europe, it can be 60, sometimes even 55. So let's celebrate being older. Get into those places.
Right.
Any more comments about Paris art, any of those places you've been? I will say you could just walk around the city of Paris. Yeah. You could just walk around the city and have a great time. Something to do about research. I will say, read a good guidebook about it, because there's something different, special on every day in Paris. For example, I'm a stamp collector, and there is a stamp collecting day. I think it's Tuesdays in a certain plaza in Paris you go to, and they have tables full of stamps. Of course, you can stroll along the Seine, and they call them the book stalls. They've got a lot more than books in them. Every day, that's generally open. But there's a different market or different something going on every day in Paris, or a city like that. So that's one reason to really get a guidebook. Rick Steves are really good on that, I will say. I'm not pitching just Rick Steves, but he does a good job. But I think any good guidebook will tell you that the special markets and days of the week that those markets are open in any large city.
I've got a tip for people, because you talk about strolling around Paris. Paris, Prague, all these European cities, they are so old, and most of them, even London, they are not on a grid system. And the streets change names all the time. And I don't care how good of a sense of direction you think, you can get turned around faster than anything. Think you're walking in the right direction. So talk about what you do with your phone, the GPS dot on your phone does not use data, I found out. So if you just get the map out on your phone and start walking with your phone, you can see where you are, what street you're on, and what direction you're going. And you go, oh my gosh, I am walking in the exact opposite way I want to get to that square or something. But that is the easiest, cheapest way, because, and that is to constantly get your phone out, look at the map, and that red dot that's GPS, like I said, it does not cost any data. You don't have to be on any kind of phone plan or anything. And like I said, just start walking with your phone and that little dot will start moving and you will find out exactly where you are and what direction you're going. And that'll get you out of a lot of trouble.
Great tip, Melinda, because you can have a map.
You can have a map, but if you
might not know which direction you're going or where you are if you can't.
Because that's usually what happens. You start with a map and you start walking and you think, and then the names of the streets change pretty quickly. And so, like I said, the old GPS red dot on the phone will save you every time.
And I will show you that in both the top 10 travel tips class I'm doing and also how to use your smartphone, that you can download a map offline onto your phone. So you don't have to have any data to see that map. I mean, it takes some space on your phone, but you can download a whole bunch of maps and then you just open it up on your phone. You're right. You can turn all the data and everything off and the GPS will locate where you are and you can start moving and figure out which direction you're walking. I've gotten turned around before and I'm like, whoa, I'm going the wrong way. And by the way, in a lot of European cities, I'll speak of Europe, but I think this is true also in many countries. I think I've also seen this in Latin America. They don't have street signs necessarily like we do. My wife and I were in France for nearly a week and a half, and we still hadn't figured. I mean, you've eventually figured out where the street signs are way up on a building, but you have to look sometimes. Hard to find those street signs. Any more comments about? I was just checking out the chat here. Any more questions about or comments? Oh, Chris, go ahead.
Yes, I have a comment, and you had mentioned your phone. I have carried a compass with me for the last 20 years while traveling, and a compass, especially, I know when I was in Russia and I wanted to use the subways, you want to go east-west or north-south, you can tell with a compass, and it's always handy. It's not going to die on you or potentially not have the information. And the other thing is if you have like a subway map or any map, ask a local. And even in Russia, I didn't know where I was going or where the subway station was because it was around a corner. And this little old lady came up and just took the four of us and pointed us in the right direction. And when we pointed on the map, she even took us to where we wanted to go. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's right. Very good. Don't be afraid to ask. Karen, do you have one more comment? It's probably time for one more comment. Go ahead.
I just wanted a quick mention. We were talking about movies. If anybody, I just caught it the other night, and it just by accident, but it's a movie that's totally filmed in Antibes. So the whole 2 hours of the movie, it's fabulous and it's hilarious. It's Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Steve Martin, and I can't remember the British actor, but it's hilarious. And the whole thing is filmed at Antibes, and it's beautiful, and the hotels and the mansions. So anyway, I highly recommend that movie, both for location and the storyline is pretty hilarious.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
It's Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. Okay. And I love Steve Martin, so I'm going to have to go look that one up.
It's a remake of an old one in where Marlon Brando had Steve Martin's part of the scam artist. So yeah, there's an even older version with Marlon Brando.
Very good. Very good. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Well, I'm really glad to have you all this afternoon. Been a great journey through some of the art of Paris And tomorrow we'll be looking at communism in Europe. In particular, we're going to look at East Germany. We'll look at some East German museums, some other things you can see. I've been there, former East Berlin. You wouldn't know anymore. It's former East Berlin. Looks exactly like West Berlin, most of it.
Are you going to include, is it going to include Budapest?
You know what? I'm going to have to think about that one. I can't. We didn't show all the videos last time, and I can't remember if Budapest was the one we included or not. But we certainly will be East Germany.
It's great because it's got the House of Terror, which is where the Nazis had set up theirs, and then the Communist Party took over.
You know, that rings a bell. It might be in there.
And also the park, the statue park of all the.
Yeah, I think it is. So come tomorrow and check it out. It's 4 o'clock again tomorrow. I hope to see you all here.
I live near there, by the way, before we left.
Very good.
Statues were, yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Eva.
Yeah.
Great to see you all this afternoon. And we have lots more travel coming up next week. So I should mention Monday evening, some of our regulars who've been in a lot of these, Joanne and Frank Kohler, have got a great program to tell you about their trip to Cuba. Fascinating. You'll love it. Next Monday evening, 7:30. Come and join us. Look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. I told my friend about that. She's from Cuba, so maybe she'll join. I'm not sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, please do.
Russ, when you
Yes.
save the chat, does it automatically save it on your desktop? Or?
Yes, it'll pull up on your desktop. You should find it should come up automatically.
Okay, thank you.
So long, everyone. Thanks.
Bye-bye.